MPH Sports Podcast talks sport and property with sportspeople discussing their careers and how property played a part in it.
James Grayson, welcome to Talk Sport and Property. How you doing?
I'm all right, thank you. Thank you for having me on.
No, you're welcome. Thanks for coming on. How's your morning been?
Yeah, all right, thank you. Wednesday's our day off. A little bit of treatment at the club. I've got a bit of a tight groin at the moment, so just staying on top of that. And then, as the professional sportsman does, you go and have a coffee and a sandwich, and then the rest of the day is just to chill out. So, yeah, not too bad.
No ice baths today?
Not yet. That'll be later on. Yeah, I'll hop in the ice bath later.
Your homemade one?
Yeah, so because of COVID, we're not allowed to use any of the recovery systems at the club. So we're not allowed to use the hot tub or the ice bath and stuff like that. So I thought a way to get around that would be to buy a chest freezer off Facebook Marketplace for £100. Get some silicone. So siliconed all the cracks and seals on the inside, made it watertight, and then filled it up and turned it on. And Bob's your uncle, and got a nice ice bath in the garden. Yeah,
well, I've been looking at it through Instagram. I couldn't think of anything worse.
I mean, it's not the most pleasant 10 minutes of my life, but no. It's got its benefits.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, I'll leave that with you. Well, James, as you probably listened to a couple of the other podcasts that we've done, this is a 2-half pod where we talk about sport. So this would be your career. And then we're going to talk about property afterwards. So James, only 22 years of age, born in Northampton, already 53 senior caps at Northampton Saints as their number 10. Over 200 points as fly half, also representing England at 17s, 18s and 20s. I mean, that's not a bad start to your professional career, mate, is it?
No, it's gone all right so far. Touched wood, I can stay injury-free and continue to get some appearances for Northampton. As you say, lucky enough to kind of go through the England age group stuff. I'm a bit too old for all that stuff now, so the next thing that would come with that would be senior honours, but I need to be playing well at the club for that to happen. So fingers crossed everything can kind of fall into place.
Well, when did you start playing rugby, James?
So I've always been around rugby, as we'll probably come on to later. My dad was involved at Northampton. So ever since I can remember, I've been involved in rugby. But when I was 4, my granddad took me down to my local rugby club. The Rugby World Cup was on. Dad was in Australia, and I think Mum kind of needed an outlet to get rid of me. And she had 2 young twin boys, my brothers, who were 1 at the time. So I think that was a chance for a couple of hours peace for my mum. So I was probably about 4 years old at Old Northamptonians, my rugby club down the road.
Oh, amazing. So, I mean, as you know, my knowledge on rugby is very, very little. I've never even been to a match. In fact, I've only ever watched one game in my life, which was in fact the World Cup final back in 2003, which your dad, Paul, was a part of, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was.
Was it inevitable that you were going to fall into the similar footsteps as your dad at such a young age? And when did you start to see your ability kind of transform into maybe more elite level?
I think as a kid, I always wanted to be a professional rugby player from, Sunday mornings at the ONs, kind of 4 or 5 years old. Then going to secondary school at Northampton School for Boys, I remember having a conversation as an 11-year-old, year 7, fresh to the school. My school rugby master was also the first team rugby coach, the under-18s rugby coach. Right. And confident, some say cocky, little 11-year-old asks, how old do you have to be to play in the first team? I reckoned I was ready at 11. But no, I always wanted to be a professional rugby player. That was always my goal. Never pushed into it from my family. Mum and dad both pretty relaxed. Mum played basketball for England as well, so come from a decent sporting family, but never pushed into playing anything. So no, I think I probably always wanted to be, but properly started developing around 16, 17 once puberty hit. I was always a little bit smaller than everyone else, so my development was a little bit slower. You had boys at 14, 15 pushing on, so I was probably a little bit more 16, 17, 18 until I started to really develop.
I've met you and your dad a few times now, once at his home when you and I started talking about your property investment plans together, which we'll discuss later in the pod. But also on the golf course, I mean, I find it so annoying that you're both so good at golf as well as rugby. I mean, how much of an inspiration was Paul to not only your development with rugby, but in life and sharing his experiences with you? And lastly, I'd like to know, what sort of father was Paul watching you? Because I'm a dad of a son who's playing now at elite level in football. And I must be honest, I was an absolute nightmare of a dad, probably during the ages of him being 8 to maybe about 12. I definitely calmed down these last sort of couple of years, only because I've been more educated really. But is football different to rugby in that regard too?
I think in terms of parents watching their children, they're always going to, not that I'm a parent yet, but I think they're always going to be passionate and they want to see their children do well. Luckily for me, mum and dad weren't pushy. They weren't the loud ones on the touchline, which for me as a young player, I probably enjoyed. I feel like sometimes parents can put a little bit too much pressure on their kids. And at that age, kind of between 6 to 14, 15, it is about enjoying it and just experiencing playing with your mates and doing all that sort of stuff. So they weren't pushy parents. You could imagine a professional sportsman wanting their son to go on and be a professional sportsman as well, just like them. But there was never anything like that, which I was quite thankful for. And now, as I've kind of grown up a little bit, we have slightly more honest conversations about rugby, more on a coach to player level, more so than a father-son level. So,
he still works at the club, doesn't he?
Yeah, so the club employ him as a consultant kicking coach. So we do spend quite a lot of time together, and we can talk about the game and about how I'm playing and where I need to improve. And he's honest with me, which is something that I enjoy and something that I respect, that he can be honest with me and he doesn't sugarcoat it, which is good.
Yeah, no, superb. No, I know you've got a great relationship, but I guess he wasn't the only motivator in your childhood, because your godfather is also Matt Dawson, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, how did Matt contribute towards your sort of knowledge of the game and sort of confidence on the pitch?
I think with Dawes, obviously, I've been lucky enough to be around some big names in sport just by being around Northampton and being around the club from a young age. I think our relationship stems from when I was 3 or 4. I recall being in the physio room and Matt was hooked up to a TENS machine, which, for people who don't know what a TENS machine is if you've hurt your ankle or you've hurt your knee, it connects to your muscles around it and it sends electrical impulses through your muscles to keep them stimulated while you're injured. Right.
Yeah.
So basically it stops you from losing muscle mass because it keeps your muscles stimulated. Yeah, as a little 3 or 4 year old, I flicked his TENS machine up to full whack, electrocuted him and shot him off the chair. So I think that's where our relationship started. Obviously, since then it's kind of blossomed nicely. Yeah, so Dawes helps me a lot. We speak relatively frequently, not always about rugby, sometimes about life and about golf and all that sort of stuff. He's a keen golfer as well. So it's nice to have another to listen to me and someone else to give me advice and for me to listen to them. So yeah he does help a lot.
Oh, that's class. Thanks for sharing that story as well. Okay, well, look, in 2016, you were one of 5 players at Northampton Saints that were given the step up into the senior academy from the junior academy, and you were given your first professional contract. I mean, this must have been a real special day for you and your family.
Yeah, incredibly proud. Always something that I wanted to do and a goal that was always in the distant future. As a kid growing up, you wanted to be a professional rugby player for the Saints, and that was always my dream. Obviously, Dad being involved meant it was special as well. And then last year, Ethan, my younger brother's just been given a professional contract as well. So,
oh wow,
yeah, it's a nice family affair at the moment. No, I'm proud to see that him coming through, and obviously Dad still works at the club. So, yeah, it is good.
Oh, that's class, mate. Well, look, 2 years later, you get the opportunity in the first team, scoring your first senior try against Bristol Bears in the Premiership Rugby Club. You not only claimed the competition's Breakthrough Player of the Year, but you also won the competition, the first piece of silverware for 5 years. I mean, can you explain how things were sort of changing for you on and off the pitch?
In terms of me personally or as a club?
Yeah. No, in terms of you.
Yeah, so I think Chris Boyd, the director of rugby, came into the club. He's from New Zealand, and the club had signed Dan Bigger as well, who plays fly half, same position as me, and he's Welsh international, British and Irish Lion, 30 years old. So different points in our career. He's probably got 3-4 years left, and hopefully I've got 14, 15 years left. So for me, in terms of how my career was changing, it was more so about learning off Dan and Chris Boyd coming in from the Hurricanes, trying to take as much information and knowledge off those two people who have got a wealth of knowledge in the game. Right. With Dan being away with Wales meant that opportunity was going to come for me to play a relatively large amount of rugby as a 19-year-old. I was getting more game time and I was being given more responsibility within the club, which is something that I really relished and really enjoyed. And thankfully, that competition, the Premiership Cup, meant that I got a decent run of games and we actually managed to go on and win it. So yeah, things were changing at the club, a little bit more responsibility, a little bit more game time, and starting to mature a little bit as a player and as a person, I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, it was in fact the beginning of the next season, you managed to get your first senior contract as a pro. Now, I guess that was just the sort of the cherry on top of a phenomenal year for you, really.
Yeah, once you get given your first kind of professional contract, when you come out of school, you're getting paid not a lot of money. That's your first kind of professional contract, but you are classed as an academy player still.
Yeah.
So yeah, for 2 years of hard work to then actually be given a proper professional contract where you're getting paid a first team player's wage was something that many years of hard work amounted to, and thankfully a decent season before that, when my opportunities came, also led to as well. So I think for me, it was just about, I've been given opportunities, and luckily enough, I managed to grab them with both hands, and the club repaid me in a 2-year contract, which I was very thankful for.
Yeah, no, I bet. Did just out of interest, are you accepted differently amongst the squad? The fact that you've gone from a senior academy pro to a first team pro?
I think not so much, because my transition wasn't one of you come from the academy and you've not played at all and now you're in the first team and all of a sudden you're playing. So they view you as an academy player. I played a fair amount while I was still in the academy, which I was lucky to do, because not many lads actually get to do that. So I don't think my transition was as tough as maybe it would be for a couple of other young lads. No, there's always a little bit of banter and a little bit of chat about being the young buck and kind of, you have to look after the senior pros. So you got Alex Waller, and when I moved into the changing room, James Haskell, and who else was there? Dylan Hartley, Cobus Reinach, those kind of players who were senior pros, big names, big characters.
Yeah.
So it was my job, because I actually was pretty lucky. In our changing room, it's like a U shape, and on the back, on the flat row, is the big dogs, Dylan Hartley, James Haskell, those boys. And I somehow managed to weasel my way into what we call Mayfair, which is that row. So I think their basic salaries were probably around 300, 400 grand, and mine was very low. So yeah, I managed to weasel my way in there, and I had to look after those boys. So
that's brilliant.
That first year sitting with those lads, I learned a few things and I heard a few stories probably that I can't repeat.
No, that's a shame. Maybe for another pod.
Exactly.
Well, look, I mean, that season, I mean, you got another 19 appearances in the Saints colours. You racked up more points than any other Saints player that season. What does it take to do what you've achieved at only 22, James?
That's a difficult one, because there's still so much that I want to achieve and I want to go on and do. And I have had my setbacks within the good things that have happened over the last few years. I've been not picked before, I've been dropped, I've lost games in the last minute, which as a sportsman is so devastating and gutting. It feels like your world's collapsing around you when things like that happen.
Does it really affect you? I've spoken to so many different sports people, and of late, couple have taken their sports so seriously that in a game it's really affected them when they've gone home, whether it's their mood swings. We've made decisions in property where we've literally just put it on hold because of their mindset. Do you take it that seriously that it can have an impact with you at home? Do you bring your sport home with you?
Yeah, it can, especially being in my position where you're a goal kicker, and quite often in rugby there's opportunities and games are 1 or 2 points in it, and if you'd made a kick or if you hadn't missed a kick, or all those sort of things add up, and people do look at you, and it's like being a penalty taker in football. If you miss the penalty, all eyes are on you. So yes, sometimes I'm starting to get better at it as I'm maturing and as I'm getting older.
How long have you been a kicker at Saints?
Ever since I started, so that's always been my kind of thing. Yeah, playing number 10, kind of kicking goals has always been my thing as a kid growing up. But yeah, I'm starting to compartmentalize it a little bit more and try and, when I get home, leave my rugby at the door and I can enjoy time with my girlfriend and with my housemate and my family and stuff like that, and try and leave rugby behind.
Well, it's the more healthier option. I want to talk about your international career, James. Can you talk us through where it all started with England Saxons and how it continued through into under-20s?
Yeah, so when I first kind of got involved in the England setup, the England under-16s team, which was the main team, and then there was the England Saxons team, which was like the second team.
Okay.
So I didn't get picked for the first team, which I was incredibly disappointed about, as you'd imagine, as a 15-year-old lad who thought he was the nuts. To not get selected was a bit of a kick in the teeth. So played in the Saxons, and then went back to my club, Northampton, and carried on playing and training. And then a year later was lucky enough to get picked for the under-18s, which we played a Six Nations tournament against, well, Wales, Scotland, Ireland, and we played one against France as well. Italy weren't involved in that, but played that. And then, kind of got picked up again and was lucky enough to play for the under-20s and managed to feature in a couple of World Cups, which I was pretty lucky to do. And enjoyed my time there. Great experiences with good bunch of lads, and made some friends for life.
Yeah, no, I bet. And that was one of the questions I wanted to ask you, actually, I suppose. Does it really help you develop your career playing for England, meeting new people, being coached by different managers? What does that sort of experience support you with coming back to Saints?
Yeah, it's brilliant. Obviously, in terms of being coached by different people, you warm to some coaches more than you do others, and you prefer different methods of play, and you take little bits from each person. Not one way is the way to play rugby. So to experience different coaches and different people is brilliant. And in terms of making friends and making memories, you and 30 lads who are all the same age away from home doesn't get much better. So
sounds awful.
Yeah, it was good. It was good. And as I say, I've made some friends for life. So that's the main thing, I think.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. This is normally part of the pod, James, where we do like a quick fire question round where we ask you sort of 10 questions and you sort of give us a quick answer. As you know, I've prepared the questions in advance. We did also take this to social media, but I had your dad on the phone earlier today, and he said, I've got a couple of questions for you to expose to your followers, to your listeners, which I think you should be asking James. So funny enough,
you throw me under the bus.
Yeah, we've got 3 questions here, which we want some answers for. So, Are you ready?
Let's go.
Fantastic. So, number 1, ask him if he ever got detention at school and how well he dealt with it.
So I wasn't golden boy at school. I wasn't terribly naughty either. I will say that. As you do, you kind of get told off for talking in class and you get a detention. And I didn't want to go home and tell mum or dad, because I knew that would result in me not being able to play rugby at the weekend, because that was what would be taken away. So I managed, I'm not sure I should admit this really, but I managed to forge my mum's signature on the detention slip. And instead of turning up to the detention, I didn't turn up to the detention. I actually decided that I wouldn't get caught. So I ripped up the detention slip that I had forged and stupidly didn't put it in the bin. I left it on top of the bin, and the teacher put it all together, saw that it was me, rang my mum, said, "Oh, James's detention slip's on the top of the bin. What's happened?" Which she obviously didn't know about because she hadn't signed a detention slip. So that wasn't my proudest hour, I don't think. I got caught red-handed for missing the detention and for forging my mum's signature.
Just out of interest, did they take rugby away from you when you explained this to your mum and dad when you got home?
I can't. I don't know if they actually did take it away from me. I think they were more embarrassed that I'd been so stupid to leave the detention bin more than anything.
If you're going to do it, be smart.
Yeah.
Okay. Second question. Ask him if he was ever treated like a dog as a child.
I think from the outside looking in, you would probably think that I was a very happy dog, mind you. Our afternoons kind of consisted of playing cricket in the back garden. Our dog, Wilf, who sadly isn't here anymore, was the best fielder you could imagine. Hit it into the bushes and he'd go and get it and bring it back. So, we never lost a cricket ball. But once he was too tired, I wanted to carry on playing. So Dad would just whack cricket ball after cricket ball in the air and I would leg it around the garden trying to catch it. Until I was knackered, and then went in and went to bed. So I think it was some pretty wise parenting skills. So treated me a little bit like a dog until I was too tired and then went to bed.
Sounds great. Maybe I need to learn from that.
And I think his reasoning was I was having fun. I probably didn't realise it at the time, but I was actually getting quite good at something by just practicing, and it was fun practice. And I didn't realise it was practice, but yeah, I think at the time it really did help me in my cricketing stuff.
Well, yeah. On the subject of cricket, I actually got a message on Instagram from Rob Keogh, and I understand you were selected by Northants to play a cricket game. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think.
You joined the squad for a game?
So I was at home. Northants had an injury. Their first team, the men's team. I was 18 years old at this point, and I was just chilling at home. And I got a phone call from Keezy, and he said, "Oh, Grace, what are you up to at the moment?" I was like, "No, I've just had some leftover Dominoes from last night. Got my feet up, watching some Suits or whatever." Yeah, he said, "Mate, we're short. We need someone to come and field for us. Do you mind coming and helping out?" So obviously, as you do, I said, "Of course, I only live around the corner. If you need a hand, I'll come and help." And yeah,
you finished your garlic bread and put your whites on.
Exactly, fielded for 5 or 10 overs, and I was absolutely cacking my pants. But no, awesome experience for half an hour, and yeah, there you go.
I hear you're really good at cricket.
I used to be all right. Yeah, I used to be all right. Yeah, I did enjoy it. I played up until about 19, until one pre-season game at the Saints. The forwards coach found out that I'd still been playing cricket on a Saturday, and he pulled me aside and gave me a clip round the ear and said, "Look, if you roll your ankle or break your finger, then you won't be able to play for us, and that really will harm your career." So yeah, I had to sack it off, unfortunately. But yeah, I got caught doing something I shouldn't be doing.
Last question from your dad, James. Ask him if he ever had a few too many beers when he was young, and how did he get found out?
He really has thrown me under the bus there, hasn't he? Yeah, so another good question. As you do, first time you kind of go to a house party or whatever, 15 years old, so shouldn't have been drinking, but I'm pretty sure most 15-year-olds have made the same mistakes. Went to this party, had 4 cans of beer and passed out. Anyway, woke up next day feeling terrible, massive hangover, because we stayed at the party. I didn't come home. Me and my friends walked to the bus stop, got on the bus, went to McDonald's, got a Mackey's, then got back on the bus, and then I walked through the front door.
Oh, you mastered the hangover cure at 15.
Yeah. And on the bus, I'd been getting some weird looks. And at McDonald's, I'd been getting some weird looks as well. And I wasn't sure if it was just my beer fear and that I was a bit anxious because I'd had a couple of beers and was hungover. But anyway, carried on, got home, at which point I knocked on the door and Dad opened it and he said, "What the hell have you got on your face?" And I was like, What are you on about? I've not done anything. Like, I've literally just been to this party. I haven't drunk, promise I haven't drunk. Anyway, walk in and I have got male genitalia drawn on my face in permanent marker that I have not seen. So yeah, I found out straight away. Yeah, that was a proper telling off.
Oh, that's brilliant. See, I don't even know if I should go into the other questions that we had for you now. This is just completely rubbish and boring in comparison. What I might do is I might just ask them. We'll fire through them. And if they're not any good, I might just cut them out. That was brilliant.
Can't be any worse than me having a penis on my face.
No, this is it. These are just boring now in comparison. All right, well, look, I said let's fire through these. I'm going to owe your dad a few beers after that one. Okay, so just a quick one. Do you have a nickname, James?
Grace.
In your opinion, who is the best player at Saints?
Matt Proctor or Lewis Ludlam.
Okay. Best mate in rugby?
I've got a couple. We've got a good young group at the Saints. My housemate, Fraser Dingwall, Alex Mitchell, the scrum half, and probably Tom Collins.
Cool. The best kicker at the club?
Always got to back yourself. So I'd say me, but Dan Bigger as well. He's obviously world class. So yeah, it would be a good competition.
At 22, who was better, you or your dad?
Dad had only just started playing at 22, so I would have to go with myself.
Had he really?
Yeah, so he played football up until 18, played for Accrington Stanley. Didn't think he was going to be quite good enough to make it top end. So yeah, played rugby for a couple of seasons and then got picked up by Northampton.
Wow. I look forward to having that conversation with him now. Who was the better player, Matt or Paul?
Matt at rugby, Dad at golf.
Fair enough. If you didn't play rugby, what would you be doing?
Hopefully being a cricketer, as you've heard, but I don't know. And if not that, I probably would have gone to university and then who knows where I'd have ended up.
What's your golf handicap?
9.
Liar. Which football team do you support?
Man United.
I see that you are sponsored by Adidas.
I am indeed, as you can tell by this lovely fluorescent blue top.
And I've seen them new boots that you've been posing on Instagram.
Do you fancy a pair?
I do, yeah. You send me a pair, yeah?
Yeah, I'll sort you out.
Fantastic. Talk Sport and Property Podcast, sponsored by MPH Sports Property Academy. Download the app today from the App Store or Google Play by typing in MPH Sports, the trusted go-to app for sports people looking to buy or learn about property.
Okay, James, welcome back. You and I met about 20 months ago when Luke Cheen from the RPA invited me to Saints. And we were having a look around the stadium. We were talking about education in sport. And he said, look, a few of the boys might come over and just talk to you about their property plans, look at some ideas. You were the first one. And I think I only met two people in the end because you and I were just sort of chatting for ages. And I just fell in love with your enthusiasm right from the start. Where did that stem from?
I don't really know, to be honest. I've always liked houses. My mum, we've lived in 4 or 5 houses as a family. My mum would always do them up and then we'd sell them and move on. And so I've always kind of seen transformations of houses and stuff like that. And I just think once Luke had kind of given me the info on what you do and the way you can create passive income and potentially set yourself up for some income after sport, I thought it was something that was a brilliant idea and was worth a chat. Chatting to you, you kind of captivated me, and the rest is history, as I say.
Yeah. Well, straight away, I just remember you coming over and sitting down. Obviously, I'll be honest, I didn't know who anyone was in that room, so it was just so nice to sort of meet someone like yourself who was just full of energy, enthusiastic, had some very good, clean, clear questions that I could provide answers for. I mean, look, when did you buy your first property and at what age?
Yeah, so I bought my first property in Northampton as my home, to move out of my family home and to kind of, flee the nest and experience the big wide world by myself, just about half a mile away from mum and dad. So I was close enough to go home for a Sunday roast and get my clothes washed. So I was 20 years old. Yeah, 20 years old when I did that. And I got one of the boys in from the Saints, Fraser Dingwall, who's one of my mates, and he pays a bit of rent. And yeah, it's nice. It's a good dynamic. We've both got girlfriends, so we're not, well, at the moment it's difficult, but usually we're not here every day of the week. And yeah, it's nice. It's nice. It's nice to not be in a house by yourself and it be empty and someone to be there as well.
When did you buy that?
2 years ago. Yeah.
2 years ago. Yeah. Okay. So you're probably 19, 20 years of age when you start to think about obviously getting a deposit, getting a mortgage, exploring types of different properties in your area. Can you explain to me, for someone so young, what did you do to find the property that you ended up buying? Did you rely on the internet, or did you go in and start seeing estate agents? Did you get a bit of support from mum and dad, or?
Yeah. So I think I started just by browsing on Rightmove. Yeah, just having a general look. I kind of knew what my price range was. As a 20-year-old, it wasn't massive, so I knew what I was looking for, which was a terraced house, 3 bedrooms, pretty bog standard kind of terraced house, 1920s. And mum's good friends with an estate agent who she used to work with in Northampton called Richard Greener. We kind of sent over the details of houses that we potentially would be looking at, and went and viewed a few houses with them. So they were kind of on the lookout for me and helped me as well. They kind of pushed me to the forefront of if one popped up, they'd send it straight over to us and we would have a look, and then it would go to other people, which was quite nice to have that relationship. So mum helped, Richard Greener helped, and then strangely enough, the house I ended up buying was the first house I viewed it, thought it couldn't be that easy to view one house and move into.
Do you know how common this is? I
know. Then anyway, viewed 10 others, and by the time I realised this was the right one for me, rang up and said, I really like it. Is it still available? And it had been sold. And they were like, sorry, it's gone. So that was out the window. And then 35 minutes later, get a phone call. I'm like, oh, there must be another property come up. The property's fallen through. It's back on the market. We've come straight to you. And I just said, right, whatever they'd agreed price-wise, that's it. I'll go now. I want that one. Let's go for it. So yeah, there wasn't much haggling. They'd already done a bit of haggling with the previous buyers. So yeah, I was quite lucky that it sold, come back to market, and then thankfully I managed to get it.
Yeah, it's meant to be. Yeah, it's funny you say it's the first one, because I've done it actually myself. In fact, I think I've bought 5 properties now. I'm pretty sure I've only ever done about 6 viewings.
Really?
Yeah, for myself. Obviously, I've done 10s for either other players I've represented or for when I was in a estate agency for 20 years. So, yeah, look, I mean, it's just ironic because I think when you're obsessed looking, you rather go and see sort of quality than quantity. And you often know it's the right house in the right street, it's listed to sell. And you kind of just want to jump on it, don't you? So, no, I can see why you went for it. I mean, I remember doing a workshop for the RPA during the first lockdown, during sort of last April time, which went, really, really well. You then reached out. We'd already previously met. I think following that really kind of sparked that little bit of more enthusiasm because you then understood about the property company. You understood how it could, you understood the tax benefits from it. You got in touch straight away and you invited me over when we was allowed to then be allowed out. I came over to your dad's house and we discussed that plan that we spoke about earlier. I mean, look, fast forward to this point, you now own 2 investments already, don't you?
Yeah. So obviously the first one, I was lucky enough for you to guide me through it and put me in all the right spots. And that was really, really beneficial. And
just out of interest, that rented really well?
Yeah. So over 10% yield, which is brilliant. Yeah.
Because we did explore a couple more, didn't we? Before that first transaction happened, we had a couple of sort of abortive sales, which was a little bit frustrating.
Well, yeah, there was one in Scotland which ended up being a little bit trickier because there was some legal things that was going on.
We couldn't clear it up, could we?
Yeah, we pulled away from that, which was a big decision. And then there was one in Wales, which again, I think, as you were saying a second ago, there's no point in jumping at one just because it has to be the right one and it has to be the right quality.
Definitely.
So anyway, found the right one up Norton, and that's renting out, touch wood, really well with the professional tenant, and doing well.
Good. You then managed to find your own one, and you ran it by me. You said, look, this has come available. I've ran some numbers. I made some calls. Just wanted to run it by you first. What did you think? I said, look, I really liked it. We spoke to the agent. I negotiated it on your behalf, free of charge. And I believe that's now completed and also let out. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. So as you say, hit the nail on the head. I kind of wanted to have a look just because of the places that we'd looked at previously. I just wanted to see what was out there and what was about. And I'd managed to save a little bit of cash up and found one that was pretty similar to the one that we bought together. And
similar sort of style,
same style,
similar sort of rental, great returns,
similar area. And I thought, without jumping at the chance straight away, I just wanted it to run it past you. I feel like we've got a good enough relationship now where I could ask you and you not feel hard done by for me not buying it through you.
No, of course not.
I think we had a good enough relationship and do have a good enough relationship where we would share information and stuff like that. So I just thought it was the right thing to do. And thankfully, and thank you for helping me through the second one as well. And it was
a pleasure. I mean, you've been very vocal on social media and to players at the club and to players in the sport about, what we do. And I can't thank you enough for your support. And the fact that you actually took your initiative to start researching other markets and other properties and started sort of firing me some bits and pieces where we can support you and encourage you to make these sort of decisions. Oh, listen, it was a privilege, we want to encourage that because there needs to be other young athletes at 22 that need to also consider what you're doing. So if we can encourage that, then absolutely. Is this your main focus now, is building up a passive income for life after sport? Because, I mean, you're not even anywhere near your prime years yet, and you've got 1 house, 2 investments. Is there a goal in place?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't think I have got an end goal at the moment. It's probably something I do need to sit down and have a proper think about. But for me, the 2 investments that I've got at the moment, I've got those both on 10-year repayment mortgages. So I'm just going to let them pay themselves off over my career, and then hopefully all going to plan. I'll have been able to accumulate a few more throughout my career, and they'll be doing the same thing. And by the time I'm 35, 40, they'll have paid themselves off and can give me a nice little bit of income on the side of whatever I might be doing as well for work. So I think as you've just alluded to there, thinking about an end goal in terms of my property focuses is something that I should really really think about. At the moment, those 2 properties up north are just paying themselves off and ticking along nicely, and to have a definitive kind of goal and target to drive for and save and accumulate more properties and stuff like that, I think an end goal would be really beneficial.
Yeah, I think what you're doing is smart. I think what you're doing is slightly different to a lot of other older players. And other older players are embracing debt, because debt, as in the mortgage, is so cheap. Therefore, doing interest only and looking to maximise on the profit and actually paying themselves back the loan, where what you're doing, you're paying the bank back their loan. So therefore, by the time you end up finishing your career, those 2 properties, for example, if you decide not to buy any more, is completely paid off.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, I mean, we actually bought your first one really cheap. We got a below market value deal, didn't we? So if we see a 10, 15% inflation in 10, 15 years time, you could actually put a 75% loan to value mortgages on these properties. And if you just remain with the 2, that's your decision, it's your goal, whatever it will be. But even if you look at those 2 properties, if they're going to be worth, say, 70, 80,000 pounds in 10 years time, a 75 loan to value mortgage on those are going to be between sort of 40 and 50,000 pounds on each one. You can buy another 3, 4, 5 properties. So I don't think you need to necessarily put pressure on yourself to have an end goal, James. I think it's in you to be ambitious, whether it's in sport or life or in property. I think you enjoy property. I think you've got parents that enjoy property too. They're always going to motivate you to consider parking your part of your salary into longer term investments like what you've bought. But no, I think it's a healthy conversation. If you decide to have a goal or a plan, then do it. But I wouldn't put yourself under any pressure, mate. I think what you've done is unbelievable for someone at only 22. Out of interest, is property a topic of conversation around the club? Whether it's, I don't know, as you said, in the changing rooms, you've obviously got maybe the higher profile players in one area of the changing rooms. Is it something that pops up now and again?
Yeah, 100%. I know Alex Waller, our club captain's done a little bit of work with you. So we speak about property. Tom Collins, one of my mates, has just...
Yeah, I've met Tom.
Yeah, just bought a bungalow and he's doing that up. So yeah, he's
brilliant.
Involved in property. Rory Hutchinson, he's
Rory.
involved in property. He's really interested in getting involved in that. So yeah, it definitely is. I think boys get excited about seeing the figures of what you could potentially make and do all this sort of stuff. So yeah, it's something that does interest quite a lot of boys, but whether or not many of them actually get round to doing it is another question, which is where I think you come and help and put people in the right direction.
Yeah, I think what we can offer is a bit more of a comfort blanket, really. So if there is a rugby player that has an appetite for property, just to have someone outside the club that they could maybe speak to about an idea or a plan. I mean, as you know, our advice is free. So for someone to sort of reach out and pick up the phone or drop us a message on Instagram or an email, whatever, it's free, isn't it? And it just enables them to actually make some better decisions. I want to discuss education in sport. I mean, I know we're part of the Premier League's life skills brochure, and we carry out a lot of workshops for mainly under 23 groups at football clubs. Do you receive workshops in rugby, James? And if so, may I ask when and who from?
Yeah, so the RPA, obviously you've done a little bit of stuff with them, with Luke Cheen. They are good. They do help, and they give you opportunities to speak to the right people in whichever field you might be interested in getting involved in. They're not pushy. They're not forcing you to do something. They do give you opportunities, whether it's in media. I know they took some boys down to BT and they spent some time in their studios and kind of got to grips with what sort of stuff was going on down there. I know some sort of stuff's going on at the moment with medical supplies and medical sales, because that's a pathway which quite a few players have gone down. So I think they're opening some doors there, and I think that in the future, hopefully, there'll be some stuff with you guys and property. Yeah,
I mean, you've got a fantastic RPA team there, haven't you? Not only Luke, who is incredibly passionate and professional at what he does, but you've got Jake as well, and Matt, and we've been in talks with Guy and James recently. And in fact, you're going to get an exclusive from me right now. Funny enough, we've actually just signed a 3-year partnership with the RPA, which means you're going to be seeing a lot more of me and my little team here. And we're really hoping to produce more of these workshops and like these other companies, reputable, coming in without a hard sale. It's about really just coming in and giving you more of an insight as to if you want to buy a home or build up a property portfolio. Reach out, ask questions, because if you don't ask, you're never going to know. And that's what it's about, really, is supporting what the RPA is doing, and us. And this sort of 3-year contract, which is a fair amount of an investment, is only ever going to really, hopefully, build up a further trust and integrity between us and the sport. And hopefully, I can get to a few games and learn a bit more about it.
Mate, that's brilliant news. I think it's going to be incredibly beneficial for a lot of the boys. I mean, you've helped me massively, and it's something that I'm excited to back you.
But that's really nice of you. Thank you, James. And honestly, like I've said to you earlier in the pod, what you've done for us so far with recommending to a few of the boys has been fantastic. In light of your experience at 22 years of age, for anyone listening, similar age group, whether they're in football, cricket, rugby, what would you say to anyone who's thinking about buying their first investment?
I think, obviously, speak to various people.
Yeah.
Lee Pottle. No, speak to various people, get different opinions. As you say, advice is free. You can take it or leave it, and just kind of understand your situation. I was in a position where I was lucky enough to have already bought a property which I was going to live in, and to then be able to save up and buy an investment property was kind of my next step. And I think you've got to understand your position and what you want from the future. You might not be interested in property at all. You might want to invest in something completely different, but I think a conversation is worth having. And as I've already said, advice is free, so you can take it or leave it. Yeah,
I think it's great advice. Are you thinking of buying any more this year?
Potentially, yeah. As I say, it's just about accumulating that pot, being able to save up an amount, which obviously with the buy-to-lets, it's 25% deposit, so it's slightly more than a normal home. So yeah, you've got to accumulate that cash in the pot first and then be able to put it away. So yeah, potentially I just need to accumulate that money.
Good. Well, I'll enjoy that conversation again, maybe on the golf course when we're able to play again.
Definitely.
And I'll thank your dad as well for these stories. We'll see what else we can find out.
I can take your money and that can go towards the pot.
Well, again, yeah, I'm pretty sure you carried me around last time.
We were on the same team, luckily enough, last time.
Yeah,
but
me, you, your dad, and it was Mitch as well, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll beat him next time.
100%.
James, thanks very much for coming on Talk Sport and Property, mate.
Pleasure, mate. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much.
You've been listening to Talk Sport and Property. Visit the App Store and download the MPH Sports app today, or keep up with us over on Instagram.